This Twilight Zone episode was banned from syndication until 2016. The Encounter, Season 5, Episode 31. A man named Arthur Takamori comes to a man named Fenton's house looking for work. Fenton has found an old katana in his attic. While the two men share a beer, Fenton asks Arthur about his first name because it doesn't match his ethnicity. Arthur obviously takes offense to this, but when it seems that Fenton didn't mean any harm by it, he admits that his name used to be Taro when he changed it to Arthur. Fenton shows Takamori the sword and talks about how he took it from a Japanese soldier 20 years earlier. When Fenton goes to fetch more beer, Arthur takes hold of the sword and threatens to kill him, but he doesn't know why he wants to. When Fenton comes back, he says that he's always tried to give away or sell the sword, but somehow it always returns to him. There's an inscription on the sword that he had translated to mean, "The sword will avenge me." There's clearly some back and forth between these two characters and some racial tension, as Fenton calls Arthur boy and seems to be talking down to him, even though he keeps telling him he's just kidding. They have some heated exchanges that then cool off and then re-emerge, showing some increasing tension between the two that wasn't really there before the sword was mentioned. While discussing how Fenton got the sword, Fenton seems to go through some PTSD. Arthur challenges Fenton with the sword and seems to know, through the sword in some supernatural way, that Fenton killed the soldier 20 years ago, even though the soldier was surrendering. Fenton at first denies what's been said, but eventually admits that he was told by his superiors not to take any prisoners. When Arthur tries to storm off, he realizes that he can't get out of the attic, and the two of them are locked in together. Arthur then describes his time as a child in Pearl Harbor, where his father was a construction foreman who was actually a traitor, telling the Japanese planes where they should bomb. Fenton tries to console Arthur, but then Arthur gets angry with him once again. The supernatural nature of the sword seems to be dictating their conversation. Fenton now describes how his life has been going. His wife has left him, he's lost his job, he's generally just an unhappy and depressed person. He admits that he goaded Arthur into a conversation and confrontation because he just didn't want to be left alone. Arthur is now in a killing posture, threatening Fenton. Fenton grabs Arthur by the sword arm, and the sword goes flying, getting wedged in the table supports, pointing upward. When Fenton goes to retrieve the sword, Arthur grabs him by the legs, accidentally impaling him. Arthur, in a craze, jumps out the window, pretty much to his death. At the very end, we see that the front door slowly opens on its own, indicating to us that supernatural forces were at play. What I love about this episode is that not only are there racial undertones and overtones, but the fact that these two men were locked in something of an eternal supernatural struggle based on Fenton's actions as a soldier in World War II and Arthur Takamori's familial relationship. Now you can see why this episode was banned for over 50 years. Race relations in the United States have always been very unstable. And clearly, especially after World War II, the biggest race relation issues would have been between the Japanese and the Americans, especially given the internment camps and the way they were treated. There's also a question about whether following orders is really an excuse when you're doing something so horrible to someone else who's clearly in a vulnerable position.